When you go to higher dosages of Tren, where you start to see anger, depression, mood disturbance, sexual performance and enhanced libido, because now you have more dopamine from that calcium signaling within the brain.
With Tren, you're right. I would say the muscle growth for most people probably stops around 100 milligrams a day, right? Anything above that is just CNS stimulation, right? Like the big power lifters, especially in Europe, you guys have the big strongmen that run crazy doses of things. That's for their nervous system. I don't think they're getting any more muscle growth out of that amount.
No, it's just to get the CNS drive.
Yeah,
you know?
which
I mean, powerlifting is...
And a lot of that, a lot of that is that non-genomic calcium signaling. So it's not that you've got more androgen receptors causing genetic response. It's you've got all these cell surface calcium signaling going on. Well, you can still have intracellular calcium signaling happening as well, but that nervous system aspect, the more sort of drug you put in, is probably again why when you go to like higher dosages of Tren, where you start to see side effects with anger, depression, mood disturbance, even like sexual performance and enhanced libido, because now you have more dopamine from that calcium signaling within the brain. And, you know,
so let's transfer to that then, to the rage and the libido issues. That's basically the last thing I want to discuss about the Trenbolone side effects, because it seems to be a dose-dependent thing. Like the more Tren you run, the more you rage and the more libido. And then at one point you get sexual deviancy, and allegedly Tren turns you gay, which is like a little bit of a meme now on the internet. I got gay fantasies running Trenbolone, but it's not unheard of, apparently. On Reddit and TikTok.
I would say
not the bodybuilding community.
No, I would say just like right. So if you're not an asshole, Tren's not going to make you an asshole, right? I would say if you're not gay, Tren's probably not going to make you gay. It probably just gets rid of that inhibition.
So it's similar to alcohol then. Right? If you're
I would have to say so.
Alcohol is going to remove your inhibitions, make you more of a dickhead. And if you're a closet faggot, then alcohol is just going to make you an out of the closet faggot.
Well, I mean, again, I don't want to be politically incorrect, but so the difference generally between, it's seen in the brain between homosexuals and straight people is that the hypothalamus is a different size, right? So
really?
Unless which this was actually published, Harvard did a big study on this. And I believe the Vatican didn't want this in Time magazine. So it was, the data is not, again, because it's not a great, right? Because it's then showing that there could be a physical difference there. Unless it's somehow changing the shape of your brain, I don't think it can cause homosexual behavior.
There's some scientific evidence that progestogenic signaling in the uterus during pregnancy might increase the likelihood for children to be gay later in life.
Okay.
Yeah, so that kind of rules out progesterone supplementation use while you're undergoing IVF. I've been looking into this very, very deeply the last couple of months. So, but to get back to rage then, to be more politically correct, Trenbolone rage, it does seem to affect a lot of people, especially in the beginning. And then later, as you get a little bit older and more mature, and again, daily microinjections, that seems to mitigate it a little bit. And after a while, it seems to be non-existent anymore.
Could it be, is it dopamine, Dean? Or could it be estrogen being too high again?
Normally, I think it's... classically, too much dopamine makes you anxious. Too much serotonin makes you aggressive. That's sort of the seesaw. So when you've got too much dopamine, it makes you feel anxious because it feeds downstream to adrenaline. And then on the other side, too much serotonin. I've never actually looked at what triggers off. It's one of the 5-HT receptors. Too much of it triggers off irritability, which can, based on your personality, come out as aggression. So I think the aggression aspect, some of it's probably linked to personality in terms of like your patience level and how you've evolved obviously to deal with social patience level. I do find personally that my patience does get stretched a little bit thin when it's being utilized, that I could probably be a little more direct, but still the same person, but you can be a little bit more direct, not aggressive, but just more to the point. And I think some of that is probably that estrogenic signaling where your serotonin is sort of moving away from dopamine, whereas the libido aspect is on the other side, where dopamine's raised and serotonin's a little lower. But I think it comes back to how it's influencing, obviously, the calcium signaling, the vesicle release within the brain. And I guess it then depends on how the clearance enzymes like COMT and MAOA are being affected alongside it. So like the anxiety side of Tren is slowing COMT down, and then you have more androgens building and more dopamine building. It could be the case that, from a serotonin perspective, once you've sort of cleared out that dopamine, there's a C side and a more serotonin raising. And, unless you've, I guess, coped to that change in brain chemistry, it can probably trigger off a level of aggression.
Anecdotally, people on Wellbutrin, which is a selective dopamine and serotonin reuptake inhibitor, and fluvoxamine, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, do not seem to get the irritability from Tren. And I've experienced that myself when I was on fluvoxamine and Trenbolone at a low dose, that the irritability was non-existent, or the rage, or the obsessive thoughts or whatever that I would normally get 8 years ago. But again, this is on my second Tren cycle, running 25 milligrams a week, which is, child's play basically compared to what I ran before. And that was 8 years ago when I was a lot less emotionally mature and significantly younger, and maybe in a better state of health regarding my neurotransmitters, because now I eat even better than before and I supplement accordingly. So I think all of these things also contribute. And of course, running a gram of Tren when I was, 26, 27, I'm sure that didn't contribute. Because then I was pretty damn angry all the time.
I probably would agree that some of it is like epigenetic in terms of like social maturity. Someone who's better able to regulate their emotions and like I said about patience. But there's no denying it that it does negatively affect neurotransmission if it's given the chance. And to be honest, looking at how you support that, I mean, on one side, if it's serotonin imbalance, then do you speed up MAOA to clear that serotonin out? Do you boost dopamine to try and bring it back in balance there? Is it a psychological aspect of better emotional regulation, of being able to see that your personality is being amplified by the androgen? And again, it's personality. I'm no expert in psychology, but there's a lot of layers to your psychology and how you've developed into the person you are between your genetics and your environment.
Is there, how much of a food relationship too? I noticed, like I said previously, that there seems to be much more of an anger problem when you're very hungry and using Tren versus if you're not that hungry. So it could just be magnifying that, right? That drive to eat, or the dopamine response, like looking for food, right? Because half the time these guys aren't really hungry. They're looking for a dopamine response from food or from porn or from whatever, right? And
should you be able to fulfill that then with just a regular L-tyrosine supplementation, which I do take, for neurotropic, motivation benefits? Might be the case. Like if you feel it coming on, why don't you shut the fuck up and take 1,000 milligrams of L-tyrosine and then see if that mitigates it? It wouldn't surprise me, honestly.
The other side could be, another layer is gut health, having, and that's neurotransmitter because of your neurotransmitters made mainly in your gut, and then what's made in the gut gets stored in the brain. It's there's a lot of layers to it that I don't think there's a direct way of telling someone, well, you're going to offset the aggression aspect of it, because like Kurt said, I've always said it as well, if you're an arsehole before you take steroids, you're going to be an arsehole when you take them. So it's it's amplifying your personality. That could be a side to your personality that you're not even aware of. You could be the most chilled person, but your patience limit is at sort of breaking point, that it just takes one little thing and then you're into a type of personality that you weren't even aware was there, but it's been amplified.
Yeah, it does make sense though, the gut-brain axis regarding the neurotransmitters. I remember I took some antibiotics a while ago because I had some food poisoning, and then my mood was just kind of off. for a couple of weeks. And of course, you eat healthy, but it takes some time for your gut microbiome to kind of repopulate, and then you're good again. So it does make sense that if Trenbolone does have a negative effect on your digestion by changing your acid balance, some guys get acid reflux on Trenbolone, and I'm sure that has a negative effect on your digestion. And steroids in general just mess with your digestion. I mean, my digestion was 10 times better being off for that entire year. I could eat whatever I wanted. And now I'm on. Even at TRT, I just have to be more careful because otherwise I get bloating or a little bit of distension or that kind of stuff. No, Dean, your audio's off.
No, I was going to say, I agree with the digestion side. But then the other side of it, obviously, is histamine. This is another thing, another added layer that years ago, it was Luke Sandow asked me, he was having bad problems with reflux, and I was getting ready for the Olympia, and I said to him, androgens stimulate histamine release from your mast cells, and histamine is what causes stomach acid secretion, but the layer beyond that is excessive histamine in your brain will cause mood disturbance, or it can cause libido enhancement as well. So there's another added layer of another chemical like histamine, which is technically a neurotransmitter also. So you have this elevation in histamine causing digestive upset, but also brain chemistry instability potentially. And the sort of way I suggested that you can get around that reflux aspect of Tren is using something like a H2 blocker like ranitidine, where you're blocking histamine from having an effect. Or that was the whole reason why I put diamine oxidase in the digestive stack that I created, because diamine oxidase is what breaks down histamine, and you lower your histamine, you lower your stomach acid production.
It seems too that tren acetate seems to cause more of the constriction, right? And tren enanthate or parabolin seems to cause more of the stomach reflux. It's the same prostaglandin, so it is histamine related, but it's the same prostaglandin response. It's perhaps in how it's reaching peak in serum is what it's affecting. But I know lots of guys that will get more stomach issues from the longer ester tren, and they'll get more of the bronchial restriction of the cough from the acetate.
So would a histamine blocker then, besides dealing with the intestinal issues, maybe also improve mood by having a better balance between histamine and then maybe improve neurotransmitter synthesis within the intestinal tract? Does that make sense?
Looking at it, there isn't really a histamine sort of compound like pharmacologically that interacts with. I think I'd have to look. You have
is it H1?
Four. It's H1. There's four of them. H2 is your stomach. H3 I think is in your gut. And H1 it might be in your brain. But there's nothing specifically that blocks H1 specifically that I'm aware of.
What was you and I? That's how you and I literally started talking. What was the drug people used to take with Clen?
Ketotifen.
Doesn't that block H1 specifically?
It's a first generation antihistamine, but I'm not sure if it
I could be
blocks
wrong.
the H1.
It might be.
I'll have to look at the receptor, but actually might, because it causes drowsiness. So
right,
actually,
and Benadryl should have some effect on H1 as well.
That taking that, might rebalance neurochemistry if it was, histamine imbalance.
Yeah, I'll have guys sometimes use with the sleep thing. Sometimes, especially during prep, when sleep is disrupted, they can take Benadryl at night.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, if you're allergic to that, do not use that. That's not medical advice. But, it's by weight. So it's generally 25 to 100 milligrams before bed will generally help kind of, mix with magnesium. It's pretty strong.